You're constantly speaking about being in the process, being in the process. What does being in the process, like, what does it mean? Yeah.
Being in the process?
For us, yeah.
So being in the process means that I'll break it down into, for example, writing. I'm always writing. I'm always creating. I'm always pitching. I'm always in the process. I'm always in the process of getting rejected. I'm always in the process of, so it's getting rejected, getting accepted, getting the email reply that I've been waiting for, or getting disappointed, or being happy that somebody read something that I'd written.
Ty, thanks so much for sparing your Saturday and joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, you've had a roller coaster. It's been like a busy few months for you recently, Justice Served and
with the launch it's quite a lot of work to get a show up and running, and then get it broadcast to 190 countries around the world. So the last couple of months have been one where it's been interesting to kind of observe from a unique perspective. I don't think you get a lot of filmmakers who get the opportunity to get their work seen worldwide, and then have the audience from other countries kind of being able to participate and be able to tell you what it is to be international. And I think that's been a great learning for me, and I think for everybody who's worked with us at Meraki Studios.
Yeah, and I want to say congratulations on Justice Served. I got to watch it. We'll get into that conversation a bit later. But firstly, I just want to introduce you. So for everybody that doesn't know who Ty Skosana is, Ty is a scriptwriter, executive producer, creative director, and commissioning editor, and he's also an actor. I don't know you were an actor.
I did a lot of theatre actually when I came up. Yeah.
And he's the creator, writer, and executive producer of the recent Netflix series Justice Served. Not only has he done the above mentioned, but he's also gone on to work on projects such as The Herd, Istembi, so Lockdown, and my favorite South African feature film, Knuckle City. And lastly, I'm sure that there's a lot more to unpack in this episode, but Ty is also the founder of Meraki Studios. Also want to know, why do you prefer Ty over Tshepo?
Tshepo is a spiritual name. It's the name that was given through my grandmother. Yeah. So I can still hear it, how she says my name, or like how it sounded.
Yeah. So
I only prefer family or people who've known her to kind of say my name. So it's really a personal thing. Yeah. And and I've always just been called Ty. So it was interchangeable. But yeah, there is a differentiation between people who call me Tshepo and people who call me Ty.
Yeah. And I know you grew up in Kagiso.
Yeah.
How was that being raised, and also how was that being raised in that time? Because you were raised kind of just towards the end time of the apartheid days. What was it like? What was that experience like?
I mean, that was I think for any part of that, for anybody in that generation, was quite a traumatic time. I mean, when we used to hear things like stayaways and things like that, those were really things that used to happen. Where I stayed in Kagiso, it was on the bridge of where the ANC and the IFP were clashing. So it was a time of great political turmoil, and you got to see it firsthand. I mean, I remember we lived on the main road, which is Tochaya Street, and when there were marches or anything that was happening of significance, they used to happen on that street, and they used to just happen outside my backyard, So you'd see people with weapons walking down the streets, and it did impact you. I mean, it did impact you how you went to school. Going to school was a chore. You'd have to get up at specific times if there was a stay away, and so on and so forth. So it was a very very different time to now. I mean, I could tell you a story about the one time that my dad decided to take us to get us pizza.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please share the story.
So I mean, we were still living in Kagiso, and we didn't have electricity. There were the continuous blackouts like they are now. Funny enough. So
load shedding was still happening.
There was yeah. I mean, electricity was not that stable at that time, you know. So it's something we used to amalahle, you know, coal, you know.
Yeah.
That's how we used to cook and sometimes warm the homes there at Kagiso. And then one time my dad decided, right, you know what, I'm gonna get you guys a pizza. And we were stopped just heading outside the township, just going into the town of Krugersdorp by police. And we were told, no, we couldn't leave the township at that time and we had to go back. So it was a different time. It was a very, very different time. I think a lot of South Africans living in that time still remember it and kind of I understand why the youth of today don't kind of want to go and lament about it, because we hear the stories over and over again. But yeah, it was a very different time. Can't say it was difficult, because times now are just as difficult, right?
Yeah. And when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
What did I want to be?
What was your... You know, we always ask like kids. I mean, you've got a beautiful son. Like, you ask him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they will say, I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman. You know, like what was it for you? What did you want to be?
I've always wanted to tell stories.
Oh yeah.
Always. I've always enjoyed writing. From a young age, I've always enjoyed reading. So in one way, shape, or form, I've always wanted to be some sort of storyteller. I think I wanted to be a writer. And I got into that craze, you know. I wanted to be a novelist or something along those lines, or a journalist. So there was always an inkling towards words, and enjoying words and enjoying communicating. So I've always wanted to tell stories. So that I can tell you, because my grandmother was a storyteller. So in the family, so you know, whenever there was a gathering or anything like that, you know, she'd be the one to lament something that had happened in the past, or something that we needed to remember, or some sort of lesson or something. And I always used to enjoy how she would captivate people with her stories. So I don't think I've ever wanted to be anything other than a storyteller, and that's in the arts, you know, whether it's acting, directing, or anything along those lines. I've kind of always enjoyed storytelling. Or films, or anything along those lines.
So you could say that we could say that you are the epitome of living your dream, because I mean, this is something that you've wanted ever since you were a kid, and like now,
very much so.
Like you literally living this dream. Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, having grown up on comics and creating characters and seeing characters being created and falling in love with those characters and in so many ways, those characters raising you, you know, them teaching you, has always been a part of my life. It's, you know, so I am living, in many ways, very much so, living the dream of a storyteller.
That's so amazing, man. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watching will be able to witness that. Like, guys, it's possible to, you know, have a dream and set your mind towards it and actually go for it. But like, what did your parents feel like when you told them that, like, you know, you want to shoot films, be a filmmaker, write stories, you know, be a storyteller? Because in many, you know, African households, we usually are limited to go into, like, you know, be a lawyer, be a doctor, and accountant. So what was that conversation you were having with them at that time?
Oh, I never had that conversation with my parents. I mean, you know, when you ask that question, you know, you ask what did you ever want to be? You know, it's very, very one that you lament and you go, yeah, I wanted to be this. But we had to be practical. So I went to university. I did go and do BA law, and that's where I was kind of going. So it wasn't steadfast that I was going to start in the industry. I wasn't sure of how to get into it, first and foremost, because I'd gone to a conventional university and I'd studied humanities and law. So it was a leap of faith, to be quite honest with you. So I never really had that conversation with them. I was always doing other things, which I think it's a part of being in the industry here in South Africa, is that you kind of have to be a jack of all trades, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. So it wasn't a clear cut thing from one thing. I did this and then I did that, and then I just all of a sudden no. I started actually. I've worked in call centers. I've been a waiter. Worked at McDonald's. I've worked in banks. You know what I mean. So I've done it. You know what I mean. So it wasn't a clear cut thing to have that conversation. I think the conversation that I did have with my parents was I'm looking to start my own business. That I think was a better conversation to have it in that way, because then it was like, oh, what do you want to do your business in, or what do you want to have a business in? Oh, then I'm going to be doing this. Oh, okay, then what do you have to do? Then it became a little bit more practical as to how I broke it down as to what I'm doing. But I still think my parents don't fully grasp how much work goes into it and what goes into what we do. Yeah.
But I'm sure they must be proud of you now. I mean,
yeah.
What do they say when they see you? You know, I mean, like, you know, you've grown so much. You know, you've been through working through with like multi-choice, and now you're working with Netflix, and yeah, I'm sure they must be so proud.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that you're right, Eddie. It's different from our parents' perspective, because these avenues that we find very exciting. I mean, they didn't grow up with Netflix.
Yeah,
so there wasn't a dream of, hey, I can't wait for you to be on Netflix, you know?
Yeah.
So I think what makes them excited and proud is that through what I do, I find fulfillment, which is that I am able to employ a lot of people when I am working. So my father's also my father and my parents actually own their own businesses. So they have a very entrepreneurial spirit about them as well. And one thing that they are very, very proud of is how many people that they employ. You know what I mean? So, you know, if they sit down with somebody, you know, that will be their big conversation piece. Do you know how many people I employ and how many people I take care of? Yeah. And that is something that I've learned very, very much from them. So, do they see it in terms of, the boards and the justice served and all the things there? I think that they, you know, because they've been quite successful, they see those sort of things. But then the rooted question is, okay, then what does it do? And then when I'm able to give them a number like, during the COVID period, we were able to keep over 300 people employed. Then you see my parents going, all right, you know what I mean? Yeah. Then you see pride and stuff like that. If I tell them I'm working with this star and that star, you know, they tend to glaze over because they don't live in that world, you know what I mean? But in terms of the practicalities of what I do, it's like, you know, you run your own business, you help employ people. I think that makes them proud. Yeah. Yeah.
And let's just fast forward, or rather take it back, because I mean, you mentioned that you studied law at Wits. You attended a private school in high school years?
My high school years? Yeah. No, actually, I went to a private school. I went to a good school.
You went to a good school? Oh, okay.
I went to a really good school. So yeah. I did go to Saint, and then I went to Northcliffe High.
Okay.
Which is in Northcliffe, which is a co-ed.
So yeah, it's a very good school.
It's a very, very school. I was very, very proud of being at that school. I was a prefect. I was the first round of black prefects at that school.
Oh yeah.
So
what was that like?
That was, you know, when you've been growing up like that, you know what I mean? So when I lived in Kagiso, I used to go to a convent, and that was multiracial. So I was always the one black child in a group of predominantly white children.
Yeah.
So it affects you. It affects you because you do develop almost dual personalities in a sense. You become almost two people in that space. And that's something that I had to navigate in order to find an authenticity for myself and to be who I want to be. But I think it does affect you. I mean, especially when you were the first the first students, you know, are in multiracial schools, and in that time when the thinking was a little bit backwards, it did cause you to form kind of a way of kind of coping with it. So you did tend to have a posher accent.
Yeah.
When you got to school, and then I'm always like, you know what I mean. So you know, it's something that stuck with me, and it's still something that I think about quite a bit actually. Because you get bullied quite hectically. So that was something I had to kind of.
I'm sure you've gotten like teased, and because I've gotten teased so many times, like oh, you sound so white for a black guy.
It was that. It was I was light skinned. You know, my eyes are a little bit smaller, so I have kind of like a little bit different features. So I never quite fitted into that space. And then there was just the bullying, you know what I mean, of just you're different. You know, so you did get it from, obviously, yes, you got you sound this, or you're trying to sound that from your black peers, and then from your white peers you're trying to be this and you're trying to be that. So you always kind of struggled with where you kind of fitted in and what your identity was and who you were.
Yeah.
So it's something that even now, you know, in my writing, it's something I grapple with, and I try to kind of, you know, find resolution, you know.
Gonna touch on that as we go along, because I've picked that up a bit as well. And then you went to Brazil.
Yes.
What was that like?
So that was so don't ever do this. So I met the love of my life after knowing her for a month. So we got married, we eloped, and then I moved. Well, I came back, told my parents that I'd married, and I was promptly ready to move out. And I was quite young. I was around 21, 22. So we got married very, very, very young. But it was great. And then I moved to Brazil. I learned a new language, lived in a new culture, experienced a new culture, experienced being black in a different space. And that was eye-opening. I think, I mean, Brazil is my spiritual home. I will always go back there. There's just something that happens when I'm there. So I do love the country itself. So I'm very involved in understanding its politics, and just, you know, as I said, I've got family there now. So I love it as much as I love it here. And you know, if you ever get an opportunity to go, you'll see how similar you know, these two countries are. You know, and just in terms of just the people as well as just the countries themselves.
Yeah, and tell me more about, because, you know, when I walked in here, I didn't know you could speak Portuguese. I knew that you could speak, like, you know, I know you Zulu, you could speak a bit of Sotho and that. I didn't know you could speak Portuguese, so I was like starstruck. I'm like, what? Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, talk to me about, like, you know, you lived in Brazil for, how many years did you live there for?
We stayed there for about 5.5 years.
5 years, yeah. And through time when you first got there, what were the challenges you first experienced when you got there?
Yeah, I mean, I got there, I was very naive. So I got there thinking that everybody in the world spoke English, and I was quickly learned that I had to learn a new language.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky that the people there are so forgiving as well of foreigners. That they allowed me to adapt. So I was able to learn the language practically. So practically isn't just kind of listening, learning. I also watched a lot of Brazilian television.
Yeah.
Really got into how they also kind of told stories, which was a very telenovela way of telling stories. So I was very, very much became a part of the fabric of that place. But I got to learn practically. I had to learn how to get around, how to speak to people, how to say hello, how to shout for help. Because you can shout for help and nobody understands English. So you know what I mean? So
the basics.
Yeah, so you had to learn the basics. So I was lucky enough that I had an amazing family there. That kind of also helped me along. But yeah, it was an experience that I would not trade in for anything ever. So I think those were the years where I really learned how to grow up.
Yeah. And why did you end up coming back to South Africa?
I came back to South Africa. Firstly, it was work opportunities around 2010.
Yeah.
There was a World Cup that was happening here. And at that time, I started working for a company called Global, which was the SABC of Brazil. And I got an opportunity to come back to South Africa and kind of help with some of the shows that were being done here. And it was the first time my wife got to come back with me. So it was the first time she got to see South Africa at that time. And I mean, that was an amazing time, you know, for us, because there were parts of South Africa that I hadn't seen before and I got to see. Just because we were just traveling up and down the country. So it's when I fell back in love with the country, and I hadn't been back in such a long time, you know, and my grandmother was asking me to come back as well. So it was, we thought it was time, you know, it was a good time for us to come and have a look, and I was able to transfer and get work here. So that's when we started. It was about 2010, 2010, 2010. Yeah.
And you came back and you got into film. How specifically did you get into film?
Oh, I didn't. That's the thing. That's why I always say to especially our young people, it's such a journey. It isn't a clear-cut journey, because as much as I wanted to get into film or to writing, there isn't those facilities. There aren't those jobs that are just kind of there and available for us to kind of just start up.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to find the NFEF, who first had facilities like Saliba, which was a teaching program. And there is where I met my mentor, Tandy Brewer, who is a screenwriter, a writer, director, producer, everything. And she basically took me under her wing. I literally learned how to script and write from then on, which was about 15 years ago. So it was from there on that we just started to learn how to practically do the writing, being in the writing rooms. But those sort of things, like, they don't pay, you know what I mean? So I was doing other stuff, you know what I mean? So
you're doing it on a freelance basis, but you also weren't being paid.
Sometimes no. So sometimes just to be able to get into the room, to learn how to work with a head writer, because that's the spaces that I wanted to be in. I wanted to be a working writer. So I wanted to understand how to be a storyliner, you know, just the basic parameters to growth in a writing room or to being a working writer in South Africa. So a lot of places just can't afford you just to be sitting around. So yeah, so it was like ask your neighbor for $50 so I could afford petrol. So I could go sit in a writing room and watch a head writer. Actually, that's how I met my head writer on the show, Stephen Pillama.
Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, I was an intern in his room, and I literally was making coffee, making tea, sitting in his room, taking notes, doing the grunt work. This was many years ago. But that's how you have to do it. You know what I mean? You have to get some skin in the game, and it's a painful period at the beginning because you need to kind of learn the skills. But yeah, as I said, I was really lucky that I was able to find a mentor and kind of from there onwards do the legwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of, you know, the writing community and, you know, script writing, that what's the state of, you know, writing in South Africa? And I also, you know, that another thing about writing is that it plays, I think writing is everything. If you don't have a good story, then nobody's gonna watch it.
Yeah.
So I think your storytelling is so essential. It's so important.
Yeah.
So what's the state in your view as Ty Skosana about the writing in SA?
Well, I think that we're a little late to coming to that realization of the importance of the writer. You know, a few years back, I don't know if you remember I think it was around 2016, 2018, or around those times. Could have been even earlier. There was the writers' strikes in the United States with the Writers Guild there.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that. My girlfriend knows about that, but I didn't know about that.
That actually stopped. You would see there were a lot of shows even then that kind of just stopped.
Yeah.
Because there were no writers, and it showed the full worth of writers. Actually, that was when the revolution and the strength of writing and the writers came into it. So now we're starting to realize it, the importance of the writer and the creative at the core. I think our writers are working a lot more, which means that they're getting a lot better. The thing is that one thing with writers, especially if you're a working writer, is you need that time to also kind of see what you put down and what your audience reacts to. And that is a practical experience. So, you know, you've seen, and that's why you see, for example, writers develop and get better. You see directors grow and get better. It's because they learn, you know, what makes it's good for the audience, what doesn't work for the audience. But I think now is only where we are starting to see the importance of the strength of writers. I think productions are starting to look at development and see the importance of, you know, if you get development right, it makes the whole production process much easier. So it's getting better. It's getting there. Are the rights of writers protected? I think we've still got a long way, but that's with the whole industry, where we need to just move towards getting legislation and policy down that protects us and actually legitimates us as an industry, because we can't really call ourselves an industry right now.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've spoken about before, where you actually made me realize something. You're like, do we even really have a film industry?
Yeah.
And you're right, because I don't think we're making enough films. We're not making as many films as compared. I mean, this is a bit of a nonchalant comparison to like the US, whatever. But we're not making as many films. And I would, in my view, I think we would more have a soapy or telenovela industry, because that's what our audience seems to be attracted to and focused on. But when it comes to films and even limited TV series and TV series extract, I don't think we have much of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasoning behind that, and then there's a lot of practical reasonings around why we don't have a fledgling industry, you know. But the fact of the matter is that, and we can see it with all the players that are coming into the country, is that there is a lot of value here, you know, whether it's the crew that we have, the facilities that we have, and so on and so forth. So we should be finding ways to kind of formalize that and create better conversations. And we've seen it happening, and it's been successful. For example, with what we've seen down in the Western Cape. And we're seeing it being tried and emulated in KwaZulu-Natal, and also now to a certain degree with the Gauteng Commission here in Johannesburg. But that's the practical thing about it, is that we're looking to find ways of making it an industry that can facilitate not only what we would like to watch, but also can host international productions. I mean, if we look now, The Woman King was shot down in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. I mean, that's a fantastic production, and it was shot fully here. So, I mean, that's millions and millions of dollars that are coming into the country and into those facilities. So that means that there is an industry that can be created, but what is stopping us from fully benefiting as craftsmen of that industry is the lack of legislation that kind of grounds it in practicalities. So it allows, for example, I mean, you know, if you look at, for example, the Western Cape, which is it's a good model to look at, you know, it's how the industry feeds the tourist industry and how the tourist industry feeds, you know, it's how all these stakeholders are able to kind of work together that creates the industry.
But I don't think in South Africa, I don't think we're using our films enough to market our country rather. And in the perspective of, you know, when Hollywood or, you know, American them, when they come here, they're always shooting like Cape Town and that, and those type of places. But my next question for you is that, do you feel that we need an independent regulator in terms of when these international productions come to South Africa, that we must say that there needs to be a standard? So 50% of the crew has to be from the home country that you're shooting in, from our country. 50% of the cast has to be, because not only will that, we're also trying to uplift our country's film industry as well. Because we're just letting these people come here and shoot, and then they leave, and they make all these, like, I mean, there's Mission Impossible that was shot in, I think, Nelspruit.
That's the legislation that comes around. And I mean, we have to be honest that happens all around the world. For myself, if I am a filmmaker and I want to go and make a film in the United States, you know, there has to be certain registrations that I have to adhere to and to follow. So I think your thoughts and your assessment are correct. It does need to kind of facilitate that so that it creates some sort of upliftment and growth. We've seen it, you know, we've seen models happen all around the world where successful industry is built on the back of that. Good, sound legislation that creates the work, continuous work. I think before Bolsonaro arrived in Brazil, they had an amazing film industry and that structure that we were looking at as well as an industry. So there are other models that are out there that have worked and that we can emulate. But we do need to start getting practically involved as young people in the political process, so that we can start having those things being moved forward for us. Because that's the only way things will change and will happen. But complaining about it won't fix it.
True.
Yeah, and saying that they've got a better industry and how that they've got. Yeah, but it takes work, and it takes us to start having those conversations, and I think we are starting to have those conversations.
Yeah, and one thing, I mean, when I was researching you, I realized that you're a man that's you're constantly speaking about being in the process, being in the process. What does being in the process, like, what does it mean? Yeah.
Being in
Break
the
it down
process?
for us, yeah.
So being in the process means that I'll break it down into, for example, writing. I'm always writing. I'm always creating. I'm always pitching. I'm always in the process. I'm always in the process of getting rejected. I'm always in the process of, so it's getting rejected, getting accepted, getting the email reply that I've been yearning for, or getting disappointed, or being happy that somebody read something that I had written. So being in the process means that you are continuously putting yourself in the arena. Whether it is just picking up a piece of paper and just kind of putting down the idea, and working it through until you find that it doesn't work. So those are the sort of things that I'm continuously working on.
Okay.
So
thanks for breaking it down.
Yeah. So I think that's something that I want people to, especially young people, to get into, is to be in the process.
Yeah.
Once you've sent in a proposal, you're not sitting there waiting for that answer.
Got to be on the next one.
You already started the next proposal. You're already pitching to the next guy. You're already looking for that next opportunity. That's continuously being in process. Once you get the answer for that, all right, great. You've got the disappointment of it, but there's still the expectation of another thing coming along. So being in process means that you're continuously putting yourself out there. You're continuously trying.
Yeah.
To make it happen for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I want us to talk about the recent Netflix series that I think it was received well. Well, from my side, I think it was received well.
Yeah.
Justice Served.
Yeah.
For those that haven't watched Justice Served and want to know more about it, there's some people that hop on Netflix and like, what must I watch today?
Yeah.
Like, tell them what is Justice Served about?
Well, Justice Served is about a man who takes a court case hostage and asks the people of South Africa to decide if the defendant is guilty or not guilty. And should he be guilty, he would be put to the death sentence. So it's basically putting the power of the vote back into the hands of the people in a very, very practical kind of way. And it was interesting to kind of put that model to the South African people and see what they think would happen. And also this generation of kind of instant gratification. It's like, well, we do vote, and then that was a significant thing when I was growing up. 1994, 1998, all those sort of things were big dates, for the elections. So the vote was considered very, very important.
Yeah.
And it was a practical way. And as South Africans, we were told that this is the one thing that we could use to change our country. And so that was the basic premise of the story. It's like, how do you put this back to the hands of the people and ask them, well, practically, how would you change South Africa? If you could really change it practically right now, if you could keep or destroy the Constitution, essentially, what would you do?
And you gave the voting power to the people.
Yeah.
So this is a film for the people. Even when you're watching, even when I was watching the series, I also, at a point, I was like, but as much as I'm on the Xenia side, but I think Alan Harvey, I'm also siding with him as well. So I want to know, like, when you're writing, in the writing process of it, were you more focused on engaging with the audience's emotional side of things?
Well, I wanted to engage with the audience's sense of morality and what is right and wrong. So what we've gathered, because I think we all very, very, we tend to have this as South Africans where I'm right and you're wrong, and I can see why you're right and I can see where you're wrong. But as we're finding, there's shades of gray in every conversation that we're having. And that is where I kind of wanted people to kind of take that step. So it is that space where you are critically looking at it and where you stand. So my job wasn't whether you totally side with Azania or whether you totally side with Harvey, but rather, can you feel yourself engaging in the question? And why is it changing your mind? And why is this engaging you? Why are you leaning towards Azania? And why are you feeling for Harvey? You know, but he's saying practically.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the key themes in Justice Served is freedom. Can you talk to us more about, because I've listened to a few interviews and you speak about that Netflix gave you so much freedom in the writing room. Can you break it up for us a bit more?
So yeah, I mean, from the original concept, from pitching it, we didn't feel any resistance from Netflix, which was kind of surprising because of the political nature of the show. Mm-hmm. So when I say that, it's kind of like where I would have thought that there would have been resistance in terms of the rhetoric and what was being said, dialogue. We were given that freedom of expression. Yeah. Which means that we were in a space where we motivated for everything that we're saying. So we were not haphazardly just going about going, well, Netflix is gonna let us do and say what we want, but we felt the freedom to creatively justify what we wanted to do, and that was liberating. That was really, really liberating from working on Netflix's side. Yeah. Yeah,
and in terms of the name Justice Served, I know the initial name it wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, it wasn't.
What was the initial name and why?
I will never tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the original pitch. I'll tell you it was. Oh my gosh, I forget it. But the original pitch, and from what it was to what we ended up shooting was. I mean, I play around with the title, that was the most significant thing. But we kind of kept pretty much what we wanted to do other than that. So, I joke around about the title and saying, no, we needed to change it. Because it was a long title. I remember that much. It was a long title. And I remember the executives at Netflix going, Ty, this is very, very long, you know? So, but yeah, it was just really just in terms of what we gave to them and what we ended up coming out with were pretty close.
Yeah. And you had 3 other writers that you were working with, and you mentioned earlier that Stephen Pillimer took you under his wing.
Yeah.
How important is that collaboration when you were in the writing processes of the story?
So that's quite an interesting collaboration because that required quite a lot of trust. Because Stephen and I could have had written it together and then had that clashing of visions. But I think having his buy-in and having his tastes and sensibilities, I kind of was very, very comfortable in that head writing space. And because I'd also known Stephen for such a long time. So it is quite important in terms of tastes, in terms of just relatability. You know what I mean? If you're able to relate, if you're able to, talk about the same references, and you're just able to collaborate. So it was probably one of the most fruitful creative partnerships that I've had. Yeah. Actually, I enjoy creative partnerships. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I specifically liked about Justice Served is that it wasn't told from, and I think maybe this is what I picked up, that what I feel that it was good that you guys had a group of writers, is that because it's not just told from a single narrative, it's told from different perspectives. That's why some people will be like, "Ooh, maybe I'm on Harvey's side, maybe I'm on the Zania side." It's told from different perspectives, and I think that's why I think you're right for in terms of that collaboration.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about working with a room, and especially with a room that has feels creative control over the project, because once that happens, then you start to see writers gravitating towards characters, gravitating towards situations where then you see them kind of refining it a little bit better, even if it's not their episodes. So, you know, it was very interesting to work with that group, and you know, I was through with them through COVID. So it was very, 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 very engaging emotionally to be able to work with them. I felt very, you know, when you feel like you don't necessarily owe somebody, but you know, during that time you were like, well, I'm able to give you work. I'm able to, you know, you become a lifeline, so they become very, very important to you. So those writers, Sydney Dyer, Wendy Gumbe, Stephen Pillama, love them to bits.
Yeah, and there was a particular point where people were raising, and I'm sure you're a guy that's open to criticism, open to feedback, but many people were saying that, like, you know, we should stop making series with an apartheid storyline. Can you just give us some clarification of why it was so important to have such a theme in this particular series?
Yeah, I mean, I find it very weird that sentiment still exists. I mean, I've watched Jazz and the Blues, which is on Netflix, which is a period piece. I was watching The Western Wall, which is a World War II piece, which has just been done, another World War II piece.
Is it in Germany? I think
Germany, yeah. So I do understand the way it's been used. You know, our past has been used in order to kind of curtail us into not be having voices and not being able to speak. So I do understand that irritation of, you know, our past is being used to justify the failings of the now. So, you know, so I understand the sentiment of, oh, why are we having this story again? I do feel, though, that we need to kind of continuously reassess where we are. And I felt that Justice Served is that what we were trying to do. We're trying to draw a golden thread between not only the youth of the 1940s, 1970s or 1960s, pardon me, but also the youth of now, who are speaking about their rights, who are protesting, who are in the streets going, you know, we would like, you know, rights over whatever. Those are still things, those are still tensions that are happening now. And the reactions of the state then and the reactions of the state now are the equivalents. So sometimes it's just good to kind of reassess. For me, I just wanted the youth to have a different understanding of what's kind of happening and be able to kind of look at it in terms of being able to look at what happened then and being able to equate it to what's happening now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And did you have any reference from in your childhood days that you took as, you know, as a point of reference and included in Justice Served?
Yeah, I mean, the Spiwe and Busi story is kind of a personal story in the sense that it didn't really happen. But, you know, it was a time where, you know, I was speaking in terms of that particular time and that particular groupings of, you know, those relationships. And that type of relationship really was a reference to me. So yeah, I think that those were sort of things that I kind of wanted to kind of lament on. As well as just also having the space being filled with different colors, different races. You know what I mean? There's black, there's white people, there's, you know, and how that kind of sounds and looked to me is something that I wanted to put onto screen. Yeah.
And you speak about having different races and different people. Something that was very controversial was Alex McGregor. Her name was Garabo, and you know, she's a white girl, but she has an African name. Yeah, that was I liked that, by the way. I liked it. I thought it was diverse. I thought it was different. But where was your headspace in terms of naming that character name?
It's something I pushed for. It's something that I as I said, for when I started writing Justice Served, I was originally writing it as a graphic novel. And what graphic novels allow you to do is that it almost allows you to create an alternative kind of reality, almost social realism. And I was trying to kind of commentate on, well, if this is South Africa, why would it be a white girl? Wouldn't you say it's a South African?
Yeah.
So for me, it was if she had that history and she had that progressive past, with her parents being part of the civil rights movement, and being far left liberals, for example, and happened to name their child Karabo, why would that still stand out in a country like today? Should it still stand out? And why would we see a white South African girl as having a black name?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You've met Rosie, and Rosie's a black girl, and she has a white name, but you wouldn't highlight that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me, it was something that I wanted to draw the attention of the audience. I wanted that criticism, and I wanted people to kind of reflect on what they're saying about that. And I thought Alex was very brave in taking that role. It's something that, as I said, we were workshopping and discussing before, but it was designed to let's show the audience what racism can also look like.
Yeah.
Which is very controversial. Is that, well, can black people be racist too?
Wow. That's the other thing I love about Justice. So it challenges your thinking. Like you've just got to sit and you look at the social political situation. You're like, but actually they're right. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and all I remember seeing, and I remember going through the commentaries in the Twitter feeds, and I said, I really hope people are looking at what they're saying, and they're just scrolling down and look at what they're saying about this character, and why is it irritating them that much? And so for me, it was done to have a conversation with the audience, maybe not directly, but to evoke that kind of reaction where it does kind of stand out. Also, to engage with people as to who's allowed to participate in our conversations now. And who are we allowing to participate in our conversations? And well, is there you have to sit down, or is it an all-inclusive conversation? And that's where I wanted to have that character kind of bring out. It's like, well, how far have we progressed as in terms of our thinking in regards to race? I mean, I understand the reaction that it caused, and I'm glad it did.
And just from judging from season 1, and now possibly, hopefully, we'll have season 2. Where do you think you can improve as a writer?
Where I can improve as a writer? I think for me, it's tasting myself in genres that I haven't embraced. So there are genres that I'm looking at now that I'm really trying to work at as a writer. There are aspects of practically as a writer, speed. There are those practical things that you just kind of be wanting to work on. But I think as a writer, just to be able to put out more and better, but also having a wide range of subjects and source material. I think that's the one area that is so important for me right now, is the creation of source material for people to use. As you were saying, the importance of writers we were speaking about earlier on.
Yeah. Talk to me about the depth of character arcs, and I wouldn't go through all the characters, but I'll start with Azania Manqoma. You know, what specifically, what objective were you trying to achieve with him?
Well, I mean, when we were discussing that specific character, we were speaking in terms of the type of leadership that we got back. So we were speaking in terms of the larger scheme of things. So Azania represented a type of South African leadership that we got back or came back from, you know, during that time, or that we inherited. I think that's a better way of kind of putting it. And the other characters also were inherent of certain archetypes, but he was inherent of a specific type of leader that we got back, also with his core wound and his personal gripes, and his scores to settle. So he was very much that archetype, and you know, what and how that plays out in society and how that looks in society is what we were trying to say and show in Justice Served.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alan Harvey?
Alan Harvey, yeah, it's the same. You know, wounded middle-aged white male, disenfranchised, feels disenfranchised, feels that he is not part of the conversation. You know, is at the same time quite angry and poisonous to the situation, but at the same time also going through the reality of his own existence. So yeah, very much a type that we were looking at and we're trying to put into the arena.
And you know, in terms of when I said earlier, challenge your thinking, that first scene where Alan Harvey, he shoots, forgot the character's name, but he sorry, spoiler alert, sorry, he shoots. And then to me, that was like, oh, if I'm watching this as a black South African, I'm already going in defensive mode. I'm
Exactly.
Like, nope, like what's going on? They're shooting one of our own people.
Exactly.
So I liked how you challenged our thinking in terms of that perspective. And now the Nomore, I want to come speak more about the Nomore clan. That's a fictional thing. It's
Very
not
much
something
so.
that exists. Right?
No, it's totally made up. So we were looking at the Moors, and we were just looking at creating a very, very, we're not even creating, but rather looking at our own history and how the knowledge that we had and self-contained in Africa, and then kind of finding spaces where groups were spreading of that knowledge. So we focused on the Moors and how they went into Europe and they conquered Europe, and they were very sophisticated and intelligent group of people. So those were the people that inspired the story arc or the story of the Nomore.
Yeah, and there's a specific character that's caught up in a bit of a conflict, you know, family conflict and work. And that's Brigadier Mampo. Brigadier Mampo.
Mashallah, yeah.
What specifically were you trying to achieve with that character?
I mean, to be quite honest, that was really probably one of our favorite characters to write. And the reason why she was such an incredible character to write is because we also had quite a strong female voice in Wendy Gumbe in the room. And the questions that she was continuously posing to us about, you know, what would happen to a woman or a mother in that situation, where you're having to make very, very difficult decisions, but also having to be very, very maternal at the same time, and how that plays out in the workspace. So we were really trying to kind of show that, you know, in a very, very practical way without having a big conversation or a woke conversation. We're really trying to give a practical conversation about how practically difficult it is to juggle being a mother and also having these other very, very difficult, high-pressure decisions.
Yeah.
And how that needs to be kind of respected. I mean, there are times where her daughter's safety is challenged, but at the same time, she needs to be professional and cannot show emotions. Incredibly difficult to do. So, you know, just to be able to just kind of see that, we hope is just a learning.
Yeah, and media is something that has the impact to shape people's perspectives, and your in terms of like what you did in terms of the media is that like why, I want to know, why did you specifically have the media play such an integral role in this in the series?
Well, I think what I really wanted to do was to engage our critical thinking when things hit the media or when things are live, as to what exactly is happening, and taking a step back as to the human collateral that can happen. So, for example, if there is a court case happening, there's actually people's lives being played out there, you know. So for me, it's also to kind of show that, you know, there has to be a part of you that has to be a little bit critical of what you're watching and what you're listening to. So not having only one source. I mean, we only have one source there, which is Truth Media. Having only one source is not the best way to kind of maybe have a critical mind of looking at things, but have a different way of looking at it. But also having a conversation with the media as to how responsible they need to be in the world of views and getting views and getting or trending, which is some of their KPIs. And that for me becomes very worrisome. Because then it leads to sensationalism, and it leads to, you know, what we look to the media to do is to give us a non-biased view. And when we don't get that, you know, it does inflame people.
One more question about Justice Served. How has it impacted and changed your life?
How has Justice Served impacted?
After its premiere on Netflix, how's that impacted Ty Skosana, and how's it changed his life?
Well, we're busier now than I think we've ever been. But I think right now, if you were to ask me how it's changed my life, I think it's made it possible now to kind of access and be willing to try to do bigger things. One of the things that makes us so fortunate to have done Justice Served is that we didn't think it was ever going to be made. We just thought it was just too big. It would be too much of an investment by any broadcaster. So when I was writing it, I really thought I was just going to end up just publishing it as a graphic novel. So the fact that it was, somebody took a chance on it also made me believe that there's something here in terms of my own skills and what I bring to the table. And I just want to touch on one point about pitching and the process of pitching. Because a lot of people, I'm sure, have been hitting you up and be like, Ty, how do we get our stuff on Netflix? How do we do this? What are some of the tips you can give people to successfully to have a successful pitch? What are some of the tips that you've learned through the years that have worked for you that you feel can work? Because we also want to try and make this as educational for people. Absolutely.
That are also trying,
I think you need to learn the little tricks of the trade. So one thing I did at the beginning when you asked me about Justice Served was a 2-minute or an elevator pitch. So you should be able to tell your idea in 3 or 4 lines, basically. That would grab somebody's attention. That's how Justice Served got picked up, was 3 or 4 lines where the executive said, well, then what happens? You understand? So it's a little trips of the trade of learning how to make your ideas very simple but exciting. Also, another thing is send your proposals out. Get rejected. That's a practical learning. If somebody's not reading your stuff, okay, that's a sign. Then you go again. But to sit with material and to say I'm safeguarding it because I'm afraid that it's gonna get stolen. No, there's no such thing. No.
And then what impact are, streaming services? We have Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Apple TV, eVogue. There's, I think, streaming platforms are really dominating or beginning to dominate at this point. What impact do you think they're having, and how is that affecting cinema?
Well, okay, so I mean, there's really nice ways in which they're impacting. I mean, if we're going into next year, I think we're looking at there might be a crew shortage in South Africa, which means that's a good thing. It means that everybody's working. You know what I mean? So on that level, it means that practically we're going to be having to raise salaries and make things a little bit more attractive to get people to work. That's fantastic. I think when we have a conversation around streamers, I think we need to look at what producers are signing and what we're actually practically getting out of these relationships, and what it's going to do for us long term. So the types of deals that allow us to reinvest, for example, does it allow, for example, Meraki Studios to take what we've earned and then make our own show or another series or another movie, whereby we then own the rights. And that allows us to then grow, because we're then able to sell our rights back to Netflix or to any other. So it's very, very complicated, because we're still seeing the very evident effects, which is people are working, there's stuff being made. But I think the longer term is when we start to see, is when we start to look at practically what's happening with the agreements that we're making and the type of agreements that we're able to make with these streamers, so that we can kind of earn residuals and grow our industry in that way, because that's how the industry will grow. In essence, it won't be just a continuous inflow of money, but an outflow of we need to make sure that we keep the practical rights and skills here as well.
Yeah, and I know you worked as a commissioning editor at DSTV MultiChoice. For people that don't know, because there are a lot of you that don't know, what does a commissioning editor do? Just a short, brief description of what does a commissioning editor do? So
a commissioning editor is basically an executive producer for the company.
Okay.
Yeah, so makes sense. But lesser than, but to a certain extent. So what they will do is that they will source out content. They will then make the content, develop the content, and then go into producing the content for the broadcaster or the streamers. So everybody has a different name. So we follow the English way. So that if you go into the BBC, you'll find commissioning editors.
Yeah.
If you go to the States and you go, I'm a commissioning editor, they go, what's that?
What do they call it?
Exactly. You're just an executive.
Okay. Fair enough.
Exactly. Yeah. So everybody's got these different titles, but it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. And while working at MultiChoice, what was your biggest highlight there? I mean,
oh man, I got to work on some really great shows.
Yeah.
I got to The Herd, which was great. I worked with Sereti and that team, which is probably one of the best teams that young teams that I was working with, because that was their first drama. Monday End's first drama, which was Lockdown, which was one that I presided over. And then Knuckle City, which was
my favorite film.
Yeah,
man.
So I was lucky enough to be at a time when we were able to make some really, really, really great content, and I was able to make some really, really great content with DSTV, and it was a fulfilling time. And I think I made some really great relationships, especially with a lot of producers that I worked with and still keep in contact with.
Yeah, and now, you know, in terms of the streamers coming into play, coming into South Africa, they're like a big threat that I've recently seen for, you know, companies like the DSTV, SABC. And we're seeing a lot of the commissioning editors, you know, you could say producers, execs, that are kind of leaving and going to, because I know there's a lady that left SABC and she's now with Prime Video, publicist. What do you think the reason for that is, of like so many people like leaving, you know, our household South African broadcasters to go off to the street?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. It's competitiveness. I think that what was missing from the industry was that sense of competitiveness, so that we would get different companies coming in and looking at different executives. That's how the quality of executives starts to get better and better and better. Is with that competitiveness that comes through. It starts being better refined. You start seeing producers being a lot happier because the quality of the executive that is there is being sought after. And there's a reason why they're being sought after. You know what I mean? So, I think we're in a space where everybody should understand that, you know, it's a competitive space, and our local companies need to be competing at an international level, because fact of the matter is that our local executives, commissioning editors, are being seen and are being picked up. Yeah.
What sets the business of film apart? And I mean, I'm sure you've traveled overseas before. What sets the business side of film apart with the international countries compared to in SA?
I think internationally, what you tend to see is there are other businesses that come into it. You know, I mean, I mentioned it, like, for example, tourism and so on and so forth. You start to see those stakeholders and those players a lot more incentivizing the industry. I think we're starting to see it here. We're starting to see the benefits, and I think many of the tourist industry are starting to see the benefits of that. But there are other industries and other businesses that obviously take part in keeping that industry alive. So I think that's what I would like more of happening in South Africa, where other businesses and other stakeholders start to see the benefits of what the film industry brings. And it brings so much work. And that's the thing. It brings so much work, and so many subsidiary businesses get built off of that. So, you know, it's one that you hope can get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I like that you're forward thinking. And I like that point about being in the process that you raised earlier on, being in the process. It stuck with me ever since we spoke. It's always stuck with me that, like, always be in the process, always be in the process. You've got your own production company, Meraki Studios.
Yeah.
What does Meraki mean?
Meraki means to put your soul into your work.
Oh, wow. Damn! That is like such a... Because, I mean, as filmmakers, when we make a project, we call that like our baby. Like, you know, we put everything that you have in your work. Yeah. And it's also like it's a motivation that to always put your soul into your work. Yeah. But
it makes that you make sure that the environment that you create from that, which is something that we're very, 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 very strict about, and very meticulous about, is the environment that we create for the people who come to work with us at Meraki. Yeah, you know, we want it to be a memorable experience for all the good reasons. You know, we want people to feel safe. We want people to feel validated and also acknowledged. You know, to go through the process of getting picked for one of our shows is quite a difficult process. I mean, I'll give you an example of Lerato Velasi. Oh, Lerato's going to be so upset that I mispronounced her surname. her casting process, you know, it was difficult. You know what I mean? She was called in quite a number of times for us to see her and to convince Netflix. And to convince Netflix only because she looked young. So, you know, but we had seen her I had seen her in theater and I had seen her performing and I was like, nah, don't worry about her. You know what I mean? She's an incredible actor. And so, you know, when you're able to see that the creating an environment that is conducive for her to work, you know, it makes it very fulfilling, and she's able to do good work there, I think. Yeah.
You were part of the casting process of Justice Served.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just something I was just thinking about. And what's it like running a production company? Is it stressful? Like, do you sleep at night? Eh?
No, we don't sleep at night. We don't sleep at night. But the thing is, because there's so many moving pieces. But I want to speak to you about the casting process because I think that's an interesting space where a lot of actors are going into to auditions. With a mindset of what it means to be in an audition. And I think also a lot of producers and so on and so forth need to kind of change their minds as to how they look at actors. I mean, the way we looked at it now is that we were looking for performance. So if every one of our actors was really picked off of performance, it was something that we just saw in the room. The actor made a decision, whether it was right or it was wrong, they made a decision and they stuck to it. You know what I mean? Whether it was they were supposed to go big and they went small, that didn't matter. It's that they made a decision and that's what you're looking for, because you're looking for skill. Yeah. Because that's a skill. You know, you've practically picked something, you've worked it out in your mind, and you're working it out in story. That means for me as a director or as a producer, that is malleable. That means that you can take notes. So if for example, if you watch a lot of the castings, some of the castings keep the tape rolling. They just want to know if you can take notes. Can you make that change? Yeah, it feels uncomfortable. You can tell them that it feels uncomfortable, but can you make that change? And that's what I would like actors to kind of walk into it, is that know your lines, because you won't get hired if you don't know your lines. If you walk into an audition and you don't know your lines, you're going to cost me money.
Some of them have stage fright though, which it does happen. You get there and you're just like starstruck.
If I'm paying 250,000 rands a day for sets, crew, people, and all sorts of logistics to shoot, I can't be hearing about your stage fright. You're a professional. And I think that's the mindset that we need to start having, is that this is a job. So for example, you know, when you're seeing that one scene, there's that one scene where Lerato's crying. Yeah. Do you know how many times she had to cry? You know what I mean? So that's a skill that has to be learned and has to be duplicated. If a director goes, I want that, give me that again. And again. Okay, we didn't get the lighting right and the sound right and so on and so forth. Now that's a skill that has been learned and practiced over a period of time, and that's why actors get paid as well as they do, is because it's an art that has to be learned. So you know, you ask me, Ty, you know, if I'm a newcomer, will I get onto your show? Most likely not. I would have wanted you to put on some sort of work into it. Whether it is you've been an extra, whether you've, you know, that's practical, because I've also done it. You know, I've been an extra. The practical learning of standing there, going to stand there, spending the whole days, that's actually practical work, because that's what goes into acting, because that's what you do. You spend most of your time waiting to perform. So it is very difficult to get into the industry, but you have to be persistent and you have to be in process. So if you're not getting cast, are you doing a show at your local corner? Are you performing at an impromptu thing? Are you doing some theater? What are you doing? And if you're not doing it, then I mean, I'm not gonna find you.
Yeah.
No.
Wow. That was like such an amazing. I think it's 2 hours. I really don't know how long we've been recording.
That's probably it.
But thanks so much for imparting us with knowledge, and you know, I hope this will go a long way, especially like young creatives. I'm all about uplifting young creatives because I'm also trying to get into the industry myself. So I'm just trying to do what I can, you know, speaking to people like yourself. Like last week we did Sia Clubber,
Yeah.
next week we'll do someone else. Just to share, you know, impart knowledge, and maybe that can help that one young person out there that you know that just wants an opportunity out there that could gravitate them closer to their dreams, and also learning about you, and you know learning the ins and outs of Justice
Right.
Suit. And you, I mean, you experienced man. I mean, you've done my favorite film, man. So yeah. But thank you so much for coming on to the show, and also hosting us. Yeah, I had such a great time chatting to you.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to SF Film Chronicles. And yeah, please follow Ty. Where can people keep in touch with you and your company as well?
Yeah, it's at MerakiStudios.sa.
Yeah, Meraki Studios, guys, the production company that did Justice Served, and I know they've got plenty more production coming soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, cheers, thanks, guys.